Hi, everybody. Welcome to Around Town with Rotary. This is a show to help educate and inform all of Beverly about the wonderful things that the Beverly Rotary Club does right here in our community. My name is Al Temkin. I'll be serving today as co-host along with my partner in crime, Mike Harrington. Mike, welcome. Good to see you.
Hey, Al, good to see you. Hey, I'm really excited today to introduce our guest. Our guest is Barry Sullivan. Barry is a longtime friend, a longtime Beverly Rotarian, one of the world's most interesting men, and we're really looking forward to learning all about his situation here today. So welcome, Barry.
No, welcome, Mike. Al, great to see you again.
Good to see you,
Super.
Barry. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, before we get into your career and things like that, why don't we just talk a little bit about you and where you grew up in the early years? Can you give us kind of a quick snapshot of that?
Sure. Actually, born in Lynn, spent my early years in Lynn. Folks moved to Peabody, South Peabody, when I was, I think, around 4 or 5 years old. Al and I share a Peabody background and grew up in Peabody through high school, class of 1976, before going off to college and all that. So it was pretty much a Peabody, growing up in development with that little Lynn sprinkled in, which accounts for many things that you know about me as to my personality. So.
Oh, great. Any siblings or?
Yeah, oldest of 5. I have a sister who's passed away, but I have a brother on the South Shore in Plymouth. I have a brother in Boca down in Florida and a sister in Atlanta.
Oh, terrific, terrific. What about school and things? You grew up, you attended school. What were you thinking about early in your career? What did you major in? What were your thoughts as you were a young guy getting ready to get into your career?
Yeah, again, graduate of Peabody High School from there, and it's a lot different today. Went off to Merrimack College. I had some exposure to my eventual career. My dad was a CPA. He was in finance and business, and so I had a chance to kind of absorb some of what he did day to day and kind of learn, and it was interesting to me. So that kind of set a bit of a foundation. But I went to Merrimack as a co-op student, as an accounting major. Interestingly, my dad was a tenured professor at Bentley when I went to Merrimack. But Bentley at the time was going through some transition, and he felt Merrimack was a better option. And the co-op program kept me in college and allowed me to graduate. I don't think I would have got all the way through if I just went the pure academic route.
Oh, good for you.
I'm sure that's not true. But so after all of that, what is it that brought you to Beverly?
Getting married. I was fortunate enough to marry a Beverly girl. There's a longer story behind that. I was actually still in college. I hadn't quite graduated. She was a little bit older than I was, but she was a hardcore Beverly girl, and we got married and moved into Wildside on Winthrop Avenue and started our life there. And I'll talk later, but 3-4 years later, started a family and all of that. So it led to my fairly long time in Beverly of 25 odd years.
Terrific, terrific. And you've just led me into my next question. So tell us about your family.
Yeah, so I'm blessed with 3 daughters, and they're all in the Boston area. My oldest lives in Essex. She's married and has 2 children, and my middle daughter lives in Framingham right now, and she's married and she has 2 children, and my youngest one is married and lives in Hampton and Hampton, and she has 2 children.
Oh my goodness! Okay.
And they're all girl boy. Wow. So there's something very symmetric about that I really like. The oldest granddaughter is 14. And the youngest one is 4. And they're kind of evenly spaced out, which is, again, equally appealing. I had nothing to do with all of that, but it worked out that way. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Tell us a little bit about your professional career. I know you've had different stops along the way. Can you give us kind of a quick snapshot of the things that happened as you rolled along in your career?
Yeah, it's a long story, which I'll keep short. I started out actually as a co-op student in college, worked for Baybanks, for those of us that remember Baybanks. Mm-hmm. And I was in their management program at Baybank Merrimack Valley up in the Lawrence, Andover area, and did a lot of things with them. I worked in lending. I did debt collection and repossession of cars. I worked in branch administration. I did a lot of different things on that path and stayed with them after college. They offered me a job, but I had been an accounting major. And after a little bit, I decided I should probably get my CPA. That's what I went to school for, and then we'll see what happens. In order to do that, you need to work in public accounting, otherwise known as indentured servitude. So for 3 years, they own you. And you need that experience requirement to get your license. So I did that and got into it and frankly loved it. So I spent about 5 years there, and I had a plan. My plan was to spend time in public accounting. My plan was then to spend some time in private industry. And then my plan was to see what I wanted to do when I grow up. So I did about 5 years in public accounting. Went to work for a very interesting company in Cambridge, Bolt, Beranek and Newman, BBN. They did invent the internet. And for anybody watching who has an interest in computer history and the history of the internet, look up Bolt, Beranek and Newman, or BBN. Spent a couple of years there, and then decided I wanted to start my own business. And so I got together with a former coworker from Coopers and Lybrand, where I had worked in public accounting, and we started a practice at 266 Cabot Street in Beverly, Massachusetts. Both of us, jumped on board, and from there we just grew our business. Again, I'll keep it short. We were lucky. Due to an unfortunate circumstance, the passing of a CPA in Beverly, Renee Gilmet, somewhat untimely, we were able to acquire his business, which allowed us to grow. And then we moved that up to Cherry Hill Park in Danvers. And then we were up there for many years until we eventually sold our practice to American Express in the late 90s. How far would you like me to go? I can keep on going if you like.
Just one quick question.
Sure.
Were you mostly a tax prep practice, or?
No, we did a lot of taxes, but we also did auditing, and we did business advisory. I did litigation, counsel support, and testifying. So we did a fair amount for a smaller business, depending upon our client needs. The eventual sale of the practice came about because we were getting stretched too thin, and we needed more. We either had to shrink our business and focus, or bring on more resources to be able to expand. And we had a very interesting practice, so we ended up joining Amex with the goal of expanding the business in that manner. So that was the background to it. I've done a little bit of everything, if you will. But after a couple of years of American Express, I ended up leaving to go to work with a client that was joining the dot-com boom, and it was the Gloucester Seafood Display Auction up in Gloucester, Mass. And we developed a traditional English cry auction that ended up going online on the internet. It's one of the first ones back in the late 90s. And so they went from 30 guys in a room bidding on fish to doing it online. And there was another auction in New Bedford that had some online activity, but we were the first true online auction as we kind of know online today on AOL dial-ups. We think in the world. We were backed by private equity and had a few good years with that. The dot-com bust happened. We ended up buying the company back. And then from there, I went on to do some other consulting. It wasn't a fit for me after we bought the company back and returned it to private ownership. From there, I went to join Endicott College on the staff of Dick Wiley and was VP of Institutional Advancement. And I had been on the board and involved in Endicott for quite a while through Joe Callahan and Dick. And so I joined the college, and that's a different funny story for a different day of how that came about. But joined the college, spent a couple of years there, and had an opportunity to go back into private industry, which happened to be in Arizona. So in 2005, that's what got me to go to Arizona, and I've been there ever since. I've been there since 2005, so 21 plus years. And in that time, I've worked primarily in private equity-owned companies, mostly aerospace and defense. I've retired 3 times, and I've failed retirement 3 times. Most recently, 6 months ago, I went back to work with a good friend of mine with a company out of Dallas, and typically in the CFO role, some CEO roles, but it's been a great journey. I've worked in companies from 50 million in revenues to 500 million in revenues and all around the country, and in some cases the world. So that CPA thing was a good bet that I made, because it just took me on a pretty interesting professional journey.
Oh, that's great. Wow, what an intriguing career you've had. So now, you're still working a little bit now. You said you've unsuccessfully retired a few times. As you reflect back and think about your career, was there a particular time you were most happy? Are there certain things you accomplished along the way you look back and say, wow, that was really cool. I feel most proud of that.
There are a couple of things. I think when I reflect, and I'm doing more of that these days. I think in the early 90s, when I had my business, my partner and I, Ken Drooks, had our business in Beverly. And part of my reason we opened the business was to be more involved in the community. My girls were in school here. I was able through that to participate in the community I was on the planning board in Beverly for a number of years. I was on the board of directors of Beverly National Bank, the North Shore Chamber of Commerce, Beverly Chamber, all of the community stuff we all do, Beverly Rotary. That's how I'll talk about that later. But it really was satisfying, very satisfying for me to be involved in the community, both civically, professionally, as a dad, as a husband, as a, played softball, and we had our bowling leagues and all the other stuff. So that period in the 90s when I was in my mid-30s or so was just a great time in a lot of different ways.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I asked my mother once when she was probably in her 80s, I said, when you reflect back, what was the best time of your life? If you had just get stuck at one age, she goes, I'd say 35. You're still young enough that you got your fastball going, but you're old enough you've acquired a little bit of wisdom.
Yeah.
So you get a nice balance there. So.
I totally agree with that. I think as I gotten older, I don't mind being older because it means I know how the story ends.
Yeah.
I don't have to get worked up about stuff. I know how it's going to go. Unfortunately, the mind's good. The body has not followed. But when you're in your 30s, I'm still playing ice hockey and competitive softball and other things. And again, was very, very fortunate in my business life at that time to be able to be very involved in Beverly, which I think is a great place. And so if you look at not an event, but a period of time, probably like 90, 91 through, probably 2000 roughly was just, I'd say, my prime time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like a busy, fascinating career, and you've worn a lot of hats, and you've learned a lot, and you're still doing stuff.
Yeah.
Just right now, are you doing a little bit of consulting, or what types of activities professionally are you involved in?
Well, I had a good friend of mine. We worked together in Cleveland in a defense company, and he ended up going to work for a company as CEO in a company in Dallas. And so, again, the short story, he lost his CFO, and he called me back in November, December to kind of, what are you doing? And I was just at the right moment because I was bored stiff. My wife was bored of having me be bored, and I needed to do something. And I had
Timing is everything.
Yeah. I had done a few consulting gigs for old clients and things of that nature, but this was a full-time gig, but it was something I could do remote. It's a very distributed company, challenging but not too challenging, and so it's been a really good fit. I've been busy but not overly busy. Travel a little bit, for work. Go to Dallas periodically and other places. Keeps me stimulated, and I think it'll be a good place to finish off my career. I think when this is done, I think this is it. And I've learned in my retirement, we're all different. I learned in my retirement I can't retire. I need to be using my brain. Playing golf isn't cut it. I spend time with the grandkids and the family, but I need something to do. And I didn't plan well for it. So this is my something to do. And I've volunteered and other stuff, and I still do. But this is my happy place, I guess.
Well, I think they're lucky to have you. And let me just take a quick moment here. Ladies and gentlemen, please pay attention we're going to show you a short video to again, help educate you on some of the great things that the Rotary Club does. And we'll be back in just a couple of minutes or so with our great guest, Barry Sullivan. Thank you.
We raise a lot of money for Beverly organizations.
And they bought us our refrigerated van.
They made a significant contribution to the restoration of Ellis Square.
They helped us house a family experiencing homelessness.
They bought us our bookmobile.
They were actually the first ones to donate instruments to the high school band.
They bought oxygen masks for our rescue dogs.
They helped buy our school bus.
They fund the annual Brad Gage Ice Cream Social at Lynch Park every summer, and they even scoop the ice cream.
Since 2014, they've supported the Cabot, funding preservation of this historic gem.
They helped to fund the Council on Aging van.
They were a major donor to our new infant toddler playground.
They bought an emergency generator for Harbor Lighthouse.
We funded and built the gazebo.
And we've got a green thumb.
A lot of green thumbs.
A lot of green thumbs.
Not to mention sculptures.
We planted more than 100 trees last year.
They donated a shuttle bus stop that brings veterans to the VA hospital in Bedford.
We're going to buy a water drone to clean plastics out of Beverly Harbor.
They make a big difference for United Way.
We give up to 8 scholarships.
8 scholarships every year since the mid-1980s.
And I was a recipient, and thanks to their help, I was the first in my family to go to college.
It's more than just a local organization.
There are 33,000 clubs
in 200 countries with 1.2 million members worldwide.
All that good adds up.
Those do-gooders just keep doing good.
We funded 13 wells in Kisumu, Kenya, bringing water to 13 schools.
We contributed to Kalusha School in Pakistan, and later to the construction of a fabulous women's college.
Hi, I'm Izzy Polito.
I'm Mirabella Polito. I'm Andrea Polito. And we're all youth exchange students.
We started the Youth Exchange program 13 years ago.
partly because I was also an exchange student in 1979.
I'm Aku. I'm from Finland. They hosted me as exchange student.
We funded Dr. Gordon Sato of Hamilton, who devised a way to grow trees in salt water in Senegal, Mauritania, and Eritrea.
Our club has funded at least 20 life-changing surgeries around the world.
And we've participated as non-medical volunteers
in the Philippines,
in Bolivia,
and Venezuela.
And remember,
since launching the Polio Plus campaign over 30 years ago, the number of polio cases worldwide has dropped 99%.
In 2019, clubs in the district joined the Polar Plunge to eradicate polio. The clubs raised $90,000.
Can we get back to Beverly, please?
Over the past 10 years, we've raised, probably about $100,000. Try $400,000.
Over the past 10 years, we've raised over $1 million.
I have made some wonderful friends.
It's downright inspiring.
It's an important part of my week.
It's a very important part of my week.
Sometimes it's the best part of my week.
It's one of the best things I do.
Even if people still ask about the secret handshake.
Welcome back. Our guest again today is the most wonderful Barry Sullivan, who's just gone through a litany of where his career took him when he graduated from college. And it's an amazing story, as all of you now know. So now you're retired, and you...
Semi-retired.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Semi-retired. And you spent a lot of time in various locations. How does all the traveling, all of that work in?
Well, there's travel for business, there's travel for family, there's travel personally with my wife. And so when I moved to Arizona a little over 20 years ago, my children were a little upset. They didn't love the idea. My youngest had gone off to college, but I said, okay, time for Dad to, do some things here. And I made the commitment to them I would never be back less than every quarter, back to Beverly. And I've never failed in that. And usually I'm here more than that. So I travel all the time between Boston and Phoenix just to visit family. I have a little place in Essex. And when I'm here, it's about the grandkids, it's about the girls, and doing things with them, being a family person around here. Work-wise, I've traveled a lot with work. Most of it has been domestically over the years. I think 2018 was my big year. I had 220 nights in hotels, according to my Marriott and Hilton records. So that's the kind of travel I did. And my wife and I now, my wife Toshiko, second marriage, we've been married for 22 years now. We travel a lot personally. She's Japanese. I've been to Japan 25 times. We've gone to South America. We've gone all over Europe. I've been to China for work, Taiwan for work, Machu Picchu in South America, and a million other places in between. So we get away and travel as much as we can. It is our hobby. And if I ever hit Powerball or whatever, then I'll permanently retire because I couldn't afford my hobby. It helps me. My working helps me afford my hobby, which is travel.
Funny thing about that, huh?
Yeah.
So what do you do for fun? So besides traveling, what do you do for fun?
Yeah, it's travel and families, most of it. I've been an avid golfer most of my life. I have a few mobility issues, so the golf game is kind of sliding away a little bit. And I putter around, but I don't have the ability to play like I used to play. I was a longtime member, as you guys know, at Salem Country Club. And I just left like a year and a half ago, and I took a little sabbatical. I'm thinking about going back, but again, the golf isn't really there. So I think it's really, I do some volunteer work, hospice in Arizona and Phoenix and things like that. So I'm looking at it. Fun may not be the right word. Fulfilling might be the right word. And there's fun included in all of the above. But I'm trying to, it's all about family and all now. Work and other things come secondarily to that. But it's, so a little bit of everything. I'm up for anything.
Great answer.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about Rotary. This is the Rotary television show, and we can talk a little bit about that. You've been a Rotarian on and off in Beverly here for a long time. You predated Al and I. We've been doing this for a long time, and now you're back. We're delighted to have you. But tell us about your Rotary career. I know you were introduced to Rotary at some point. You were past president. Who introduced you to Rotary back in the day?
So you can blame Tom Alexander.
Okay. He was my sponsor too.
Yeah, it was late November of 1986. And if you remember, there was a pretty significant tax act or change in the tax law that came out in '86. And so Tom, who had his law practice and was just really getting going, approached me and he said, hey, would you like to come to Rotary and talk about the new tax act? And I couldn't think of anything that people in Rotary would less likely want to hear about than that.
Good point.
So, but I said, sure. And I tried to make it amusing at times. I'd like to think I had some success with that. And that was my introduction to Rotary. In May of '87, I actually joined. I guess that I didn't screw up enough that they didn't want to have me join. But they asked me to join the club. Jack Good was president when I joined the club, and was a member for, again, 20 odd years. Served as president, I think it was 96, 97. And along the way, and you all know some of these things that have participated, we had our Rotary softball team. We had our Rotary golf trip that was for a number of years down to Myrtle Beach. What happens in Myrtle Beach stays in Myrtle Beach. Right. But Rotary was just an incredibly fulfilling thing for me. It was about, again, giving back to the community, getting to know fellow businessmen and businesswomen in the community. When I first joined, women were not allowed to join Rotary. As you may know, Kim Desjardins Minetta was our first female Rotarian, eventually became president. But that was an interesting time. And I was the youngest member of the club when I joined. I was 28, just turned 28 years old. And it was a very different club back then. Business owners, bank presidents, et cetera. And today, most of our banks are owned by out-of-towners. And so the makeup of the club, and you both know this, has changed significantly in the last number of years. So when I moved to Arizona, that was my departure point for Beverly, for the Rotary Club. And I didn't do anything with the Rotary Club in Arizona, so I did other things. But when Jack Good passed away a few years ago, I reached out to Marshall Hanley, the president, and I said, what are you doing for Jack, if anything? And they were putting together a scholarship fund, so I wanted to donate to that. And Marshall and Brian Murphy said, what are you doing? Do you want to join the club again? And I said, if you'll have me. I said, the rules used to be you had to be at meetings, consecutively. You couldn't miss meetings and things of that nature. And being in Arizona, that would be a challenge. So short story was they let me back in. The check didn't bounce, so my dues were good.
Yeah, you passed the background check.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. I passed it well enough. But it was great because it was my coming back. I was starting to come back here more. And when I stayed connected with the club. Got me to reconnect at a deeper level. And again, for later in my life, part of my plan was being involved again and giving back. I'll move back here at some point. My wife and I are in negotiations at the moment about that. And so I like to think that that's part of our retirement here, is to continue to be active in the club and so forth. So I went from being the youngest member when I joined to now I'm one of the oldest members of the club.
Good for us. Join the club.
Yeah.
Well, I love your comments about Jack Good. I mean, so many of us love Jack and admire Jack. And, he had the perfect name for a guy of that persona. He just radiated goodness and wisdom, and he was just a remarkable guy.
He was an exceptional man. Yeah. And I got to know him. I was on the board of the bank with him, and through United Way and Beverly Hospital Board, a lot of the institutions. So I got to see him in a number of different ways, in a number of different contexts. And the man never let you down. No. He was the real deal, and is one of those people that I could never hope to emulate. But I mean, he's one of those people, if you want a role model, Jack Good was a role model, and did it with the family, did it with work, did it with the community to a degree. I just don't know how he did it. And he was always there. Jack was always there. So he's a good guy.
There were some other big personalities back in those early days when you were meeting at the Commodore, Alex Michaud or General Patton. I know you had kind of a fun relationship with Mr. Frangos over at the Commodore. Any funny stories or things you'd like to share about that era?
I'll share a few things. There were some big personalities, people that impressed me when I first came on board as being interesting folks. Frank King, who was the publisher of the Beverly Times at the time. We had Peter Carnes and John Finnegan, our police chiefs in Wenham and Beverly, respectfully. General Patton, Larry Smith, Joe Callahan, all of the people who were big people in the Beverly North Shore area back in the day. And we had some pretty funny people there, Mike Zimajewski and others, Tom Alexander, the whole Sergeant-at-Arms thing and stuff. But yeah, Mike Frangos and I had a very friendly, and people don't believe that. We had a great relationship. But as you know, I spared nothing. I showed no mercy to Mike. I didn't think I thought they could have done a better job with the lunches at Rotary in terms of the quality. And so I used to tease Mike about that. So one of the things I did, and I'll tell you what happened, they served us stuffed peppers one day for lunch, which was an amalgamation of leftovers stuffed into some green thing. And I just kind of lost it. And so I think the lunch fee had just gone up like from $8 to $10. And so the following week, I ended up ordering takeout pizza to be delivered to the Rotary lunch. And I told everybody at my table, I said, don't get anything, don't take lunch. And nobody knew this, nobody knew about it. And so I told the pizza guy, I said, when you deliver, and I think it was Domino's, come to the back room, stand there, I'll find you. And I'm looking, and I told them what time to deliver. They were on time, and everyone's got their food. All of a sudden, it shows up like 4 pizzas. And I said, I'm here. No internet in those days. I had to actually pay him. And we ended up having pizza. And I know for a fact that half the club thought that I was a jerk, and they weren't wrong. And half the club thought it was pretty funny, and they weren't wrong either. And I was willing to accept those consequences. And Mike and I never had a foul word about it. I don't say I apologized, but I told him, Mike, it's in good fun. Please don't take it personally. The second item was I was in the fish business for a while. And one day I came into, I was sergeant. I came in that day, and part of my sergeant routine, I brought like a 25, 30-pound fresh codfish, fresh caught that morning, and I had it in a bag. And when I got up, I started with the routine, and I said, Mike, you have no idea what this is, but this is a fresh fish. If you take it back to the kitchen, see if somebody knows what they can do with it for lunch. So I gave him the fish to take back to do with as he pleased. And this last story, which is one of my favorites, well, I will give full attribution to Rick Mooney, because it was his comment. Sergeant one day, and it was snowing out, one of the early snows, like 3, 4, 5 inches of snow on the ground. And lunch was late getting served. And my comment was, I said, Mike, I have to fine you because you're serving lunch late, but I'm going to absolve you because it's really hard to find roadkill under fresh snow. So you're off the hook.
So, he must have loved you.
Oh, yeah. Mike and I did have a great relationship, and we got along great. So he took it. I give him credit. He took it because I was out of line a few times, but he took it with a grain of salt and was very good about it.
Well, stories like that is how the legend of Barry Sullivan evolved. I mean, you know.
Legend, but
that's interesting. That is so
we
much.
won't talk about burning down Paul Breon's back porch. That's a different story.
That'll be for the next show.
Had nothing to do with
that. That'll be for the next show.
Part 2 of the series. So what were some of the, before you became president, what were some of the committees and activities you got involved with relative to Rotary?
You know the journey. We all do programs, and the interesting thing, I did not serve on or never was the treasurer of the club. And I don't recall ever being asked if I wanted to do that. And if I was asked, I probably turned it down, because that's my day job. And we had very competent and great treasurers, so I never had to do that, which I would have thought was a burden. But I did the tax work for the club and everything at the time. Mike Z was doing it before me. But programs is hard, because you got to find interesting people all the time. I was lucky. I had a couple of good speakers. I had Paul Cellucci, who at the time was running for governor of Massachusetts, and we have kind of a no politicking type of thing. But we made an exception. He came in one day. It was great. Steve Fryer, who's a professional sports agent. He was Ray Bork's agent.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
I know Steve, and he came in, gave a great talk one day. Bob Stanley came in once, the old Red Sox pitcher. So it's hard, because you want to find interesting people, and the tone of our programs have changed a lot. You want to find people that's not necessarily, they're interesting for different reasons. And so that was my hardest one. But the scholarship committee and some others, I've served on most of the committees. So.
Yep.
Tell us about your year as president. Was that go by quickly? Was it a memorable year? Or?
It did, and I think it was either the year I was president or the year after. I'm pretty sure it was the year I was president. One of our memorable things is we did the Biggest Loser before there was the Biggest Loser. I don't know if either one of you were in the club at the time.
No, I've heard the story.
There was some Biggest Losers that happened years after, but
they were at that time. It was the first one. It was a fundraiser, and my goal as president was to do a lot of smaller fundraisers. Because Tommy Alexander had done a couple. It was a couple of big ones, our big gala events. And so a couple of them that we did, one was the single post-Christmas auction we did at lunch, and I think we still do. Chet Marcus and I put that together, and it's like, how much can you raise in 30 minutes, re-gifting Christmas gifts you don't want? And that was a lot of fun. We would raise, the first time we ever did it, 30 minutes, like $7,000-8,000. We were flabbergasted.
Awesome.
And we did that every year that I was a member of the club and beyond. The other thing on the Biggest Losers were there were a couple of us that were a little hefty. So I currently weigh about 210 pounds. Back then, I was a good-looking, like 270 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And then we had, look good on me though, I'm tall.
Yeah.
And then we had Don Kelly, rest in peace, and we had Kevin Kelleher. So the three horsemen. And then we said, let's put something out there. We're gonna lose weight. We're gonna get in front of the club every week and weigh ourselves. And everybody has to bet on somebody as to how much you're going to lose or not. So you don't want to pay any money, right? So you're going to bet on who has the least amount of willpower. Kevin Kelleher and cleaned up. I mean, everybody's betting on Kevin. And so how much you would lose. And so we had a twist to it because at the time, Kim Desjardins was pregnant. So we added Kim to the equation, and it was how much was Kim going to weigh, how much is she going to add in weight every week. Now, we all know, including everybody watching this program, how sensitive it is to talk about weight in women in general.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll never, ever not give credit to Kim. Every week she'd get up there with the rest of us, and we would do a weigh-off. And so we're getting up there and stripping down. We're taking things out of our pockets. We're taking belt buckles off in front of the 120 people of the club. And Kim would get up and weigh herself as to how much she put on. And it would be funny when one of us would put on 3 pounds, or somebody else would take off 5 pounds. And then it got competitive. Salem heard about it, and Salem said, we'll do a competition. And so we'll do percentage of weight loss, and whoever loses has to provide a donation to the winning Rotary Club's high school football team. Salem edged us out because they had a secret weapon, Bear Cranny. For anybody who knows Brian Bear Cranny.
Yeah, he's a big boy,
big boy.
At the time, he isn't anymore, but at the time, Bear probably tipped at 350.
Yeah.
So all he had to do was stop eating donuts, and I love Bear, and he would lose 50 pounds. And so he had the secret weapon, and he kind of put him over the top, not by a lot, and they won. But we had great fun with it. The big way off at Thanksgiving, I think at the Salem Club, was hilarious. So those are memorable
great
things.
stories.
Fun
Great
stuff.
stories.
Fun
I
memories.
love it.
Fun memories.
Well, hey, the half hour has gone by quickly, but it was so great to have you on our program today, and continue to enjoy your semi-retirement and your travels and your beautiful family and all that kind of stuff. But Al and I really enjoyed having you here today. For all you folks at home, thanks for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about the Beverly Rotary Club, visit us online at beverlyrotaryclub.com. On behalf of my co-partner here, Al Tempkin, everybody stay well. We'll see you back here again next time on Around Town with Rotary.